What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Today, I thought I would tackle the often asked question, what do I do if I've lost motivation starting my private practice? When we start a private practice, for most of us, we're having to tap into a whole bunch of skills that we've just never had to access before, so there's a very steep learning curve. And I won't lie, it's a pretty long checklist of tasks you have to complete to go from absolutely no practice at all to launched your practice and you're fully booked and running your practice. So it makes sense. Who wouldn't get overwhelmed? Who wouldn't get lost in the learning curve? So in today's video, I thought it might be helpful to share a few tips in case you're finding yourself in this situation where you've totally lost motivation to launch your practice. Let's make a treatment plan together to help you address that concern, because it's probably not so simple as just schedule some time and go do it. If it were, you would have done it by now. First, tap into your why. So ask yourself, why am I starting a practice and why is this important to me? And I suggest that you follow this thread a little bit deeper than the kind of initial surface response to this. So for example, sure, you want to launch your practice because maybe you'd like to have a little bit more income. But if that's true for you, follow that thread a little bit further. Why is it that you would like to have a little bit more income? What do you imagine would be different about your life if you did? Maybe for someone it might be, I'd really like to have a little bit more income so that I can work fewer hours and be less burnt out. Oh yeah, that's motivating. The deeper you can go, the more motivating it will be. And yes, you want to hold that picture, that end goal in mind whenever you're trying to get yourself motivated to do the thing that you might be procrastinating. Next, I suggest that you identify your fears related to launching your practice, because inevitably, folks who really want to launch their practice but are demotivated and procrastinating have some kind of fears holding them back, especially if you can tap into your why. And again, just as the last tip, make sure you follow the thread of that fear to where it originates. So for example, let's say that your fear is that you're not going to get enough therapy clients. It's a legitimate fear, but let's follow that fear to its bitter, ugly end. Worst case scenario, I don't get enough clients, which means I'm not going to make enough money, which means I'm going to take on an extra side job that I really don't want to take, or it means I'm going to take on debt that I already have debt so I can't take on anymore, or I'm going to have to prematurely close my practice and I'm going to feel like a failure, and on and on. If that's you, don't worry. We all have that dark place that our thoughts eventually go to if we really pull at it. It's helpful to identify where that fear eventually ends up so that you can face that fear head on. And while you're on the path of identifying your fears, it kind of naturally leads to the next tip, which is to identify which parts of starting your practice feel most overwhelming. Oftentimes before we've even gotten to the part that we're feeling most overwhelmed by, it's already holding us back from doing some of the earlier steps in the checklist because we're anticipating, yeah, I know 5 steps from now, I'm gonna have to build my website and I'm freaking out about it because I don't know anything about tech, I don't know about SEO, I don't know about marketing, etc., etc., etc. Ooh, I know I'm not going to be able to figure that out. So even today, where all I'm supposed to do for now is to sign up for liability insurance, I can't even get that done because I'm overwhelmed by that thing I'm anticipating in the future. It's helpful to identify which parts you feel most overwhelmed by, and if you can, try to compartmentalize those and say, today, I don't have to worry about that. I'm going to problem solve those a little bit down the road. I'll help you with that. But for now, today, I don't even need to think about it. I'm just gonna set up my liability insurance and check that box. The next tip is a tried and true tip that I come to often, and that's to find a buddy. Now, even though I bring up this tip often, I'm aware that it's not always so easy to make a new buddy. And by a buddy, I mean like typically it would be like a trusted therapist colleague who can kind of hold your hand, walk alongside you as you go through this process. If you don't already have a buddy like this, or you don't have the motivation to go out and find one, it is absolutely more than okay to use your existing networks. It could just be a non-therapist friend, or your partner if you have one, or an old colleague that you used to work with. And the reason why it's helpful to have a buddy is because most of us tend to get stuck in a never-ending loop in our own heads on whatever point we're stuck on. And if we have somebody else to kind of soundboard off of, generally that person can help us get unstuck out of that loop, sometimes even telling them out loud without them even saying anything back to us, we've already started to get out of the loop. So if you can find a buddy, they're gonna be able to help you with the next steps. So now that you've identified your fears and the parts you feel overwhelmed by, and now that you have a buddy to help you through these things, it's time to start problem solving those stuck points. I assure you, whatever parts you feel stuck on, there is a solution to those problems. I'm gonna say this again. Whatever the problem you're facing, there is a solution to that problem. I assure you. Let's say your fear is that you're taking on too much risk all at once. Well, maybe consider starting your practice completely on the side of your existing job so that you can wait to scale back that job or quit that job until after your practice really has its legs. Or if you're totally overwhelmed by marketing, see if you can find some resources to help you build a marketing strategy from folks who already know how to do it rather than trying to invent it from scratch. And if you're watching this in real time, this is a good time to remind you that you can access a whole bunch of information about private practice and all things therapy related through Therabundle for just $97 for just a few more days. I've linked to information about that below. And my next tip is to release perfectionism. I see so many folks feel like they need to have the perfect practice launch or the perfect website or the full caseload within a very specific period of time. And though I do believe that there are things you can do, tools you can access to help increase your odds of success, to help fill your practice faster than if you had no strategy, there's no use in overly focusing on having everything perfect if that perfectionistic ideal is keeping you from even launching to begin with. Instead, I encourage you to be okay with things being imperfect. Assume that because the learning curve is so steep, there will be stuff that you continue to fine-tune and adjust over time. And along the same vein, the next tip is to set the bar low. Now, I know this runs contradictory to so much cliche advice out there to, set big dreams, reach for your dreams, settle for nothing less, and all of that. And though I do absolutely want to endorse you reaching for really big dreams, it's also very important to make those big dreams into as small of steps as possible and let each small step be a big win. If every teeny step is a huge achievement, it's much more likely that you'll be motivated to actually arrive at that ultimate big goal. Now, of course, there are so many other tips that you can utilize to increase your productivity and to kick procrastination. This is a really popular topic on YouTube, honestly, so you can feel free to do a search around and add to your arsenal of tips. I thought I would offer some specific tips that seem to come up for therapists launching their practice in particular. And before we close, I'd like to thank TherapyNotes.com for sponsoring this video. TherapyNotes is an EHR platform that, yes, helps you keep track of your client notes and makes that simple, but it also offers a whole array of functions on top of that. TherapyNotes typically offers a 1-month free trial, but with my link in the description below, you can get an extra month, so you have 2 full months to check it out for free with no commitment just by clicking the link in the description of this video. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you needed like a little infusion of motivation and some practical tips to help you overcome your procrastination related to starting your practice, if you are starting your practice, I'm wishing you all the best. It is a lot of hard work, but it is worth it. And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well. Now that you've identified, I don't know why I can't get out of that. Now that you've identified,